I'm Thorn Dickinson. This show allows me to talk with Mainers working on the most important clean energy project to ever come to our state. We discuss how this project is providing jobs and other benefits today while creating clean energy for a better tomorrow. So we took another trip up on the new section of the corridor. There's been more accusations from the opposition associated with us following that through with our permits. So we want to get out here, show people a little bit more about what's looking here, and then make it very clear that the DEP and their independent inspectors, all the different accusations that have been made have turned out to be false. Well, we stopped here, Jim. I thought that there was one scene from last week's episode that showed a clear cut.
Yes.
Somebody asked me about the project. I just wanted to verify. We're back here again today. This was, Weyhauser's work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this probably like a 3 or 4 year old cut, and it's we've been talking about. This is a working forest up here, and they went in here, cut all the timber out of it, and now you're starting to see on the edges of the clear cut where all the small vegetation is starting to regrowth, and the deer, the moose, they are going to feed off this like crazy. So that come moose season, if I'm a moose hunter, I'm looking for situations like this where we can cruise by and maybe see a moose out here, looking for it as fall comes on. So this stuff like this that the Weyhauser, Wagner on their properties, when they have cuts, it benefits the sportsmen in some ways. When they did away with the big 40-acre clear cuts, and which was good to have the smaller ones to protect the environment, it made moose hunting a little more challenging. But these are some of the opportunities that these cuts in the corridor is going to vegetate back. The vegetation will come back into it, and there's going to be the animals out there feeding on this low vegetation, and there'll be opportunities out there.
Yeah, and as opposed to, obviously this is a little wider than 54 feet.
Oh, absolutely.
The cleared corridor here is only going to be 54 with the tapered vegetation back there. And another difference from how the forest is managed up here, we're not going to be using any pesticides or insecticides.
Right. So all this new growth will come up for the animals to feed on. There won't be those chemicals, and that was part of the agreement for our licensing through all the agencies.
There'll definitely be a lot of work on this corridor to keep it cut and managed the way it is. A lot of work for Mainers.
Right. The cycle of trim for the arborists to keep the vegetation in control of just going in and hand cutting. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for workers that do that, and the cycling is going to be not quite the 5+ years like we're in now. It's going to have to be sooner to keep it under control. So. Good opportunity. And
you could see how quick, it'll be interesting just for me to go back and refresh my memory, but you could just see how much has come back already just in a short period of time since
Absolutely, yeah.
I think particularly now that we're out here doing these kind of projects, following through on our commitments, and people can also see what the project will look like, how narrow the right-of-way actually is, and what these structures look like when they're actually up in the field. Yes. And the reaction always is, this isn't the same thing we were talking about, right? So it's nice to continue to try to clear those myths up. In the end, I have no problem with any Mainer making whatever decision they want about the project, but I get concerned when, somebody came up to me and said, look, I'm against this project because I don't want to see these lights on all these structures through Maine. And I'm like, there's not one light. And the good thing is now that we're through all the permitting stuff, people can actually go. If they don't believe our word, then they can go and see it in writing. So Jim, we're stopped at another place. This is for people that know the area up on the edge of Coburn, right?
Yes,
It's called the parking lot.
The parking lot for the old Enchanted Mountain Ski area.
Yeah. And this is a place of where the corridor is going through.
Yes.
And I think it's a good example. Maybe you could describe it.
We got our 54 feet of clearing down the middle. And as you come out 16 feet on each side, your vegetation that was over 15 feet tall was thinned out. So now what you see standing are all the shorter trees, which bring your taper up to the taller trees as you go out to 32 feet. So your tree height increases as you get 16 more feet, 32 feet, and so on. So this is the taper area on each side. Both sides will have the taper area, as we can see taller trees over there and here. Smaller goes to taller. The ones that are laying in the taper area were obviously 30+ feet tall.
Yep. And now flash forward, say another 4 or 5 years, we're going to see this middle cleared area grow up to about 10 feet, I guess,
Yes.
at the maximum height.
Yep.
And then this is really going to be full of additional growth that now is coming up through, but all kept within that tapered.
Absolutely.
Tapered height.
These tapered areas where some of the hardwood and softwood's been thinned out, you're going to see other softwoods and hardwoods start to seed in there and grow up thicker. So where it's thinned out now, there'll be other growth coming up in there, as it does with any reforestation, like the clear cut we just left. They cut everything out, it's filling back in again with new growth, and that's what'll happen in these tapered areas and the corridor.
Yeah, and then the other thing I like to try to point out, this is a 40-year life project. We actually have a decommissioning front at the DEP.
Yeah.
Whenever this project's life is over, the poles will be pulled up, the wire will roll up, and it will go back to being a working forest managed by the logging companies that
Absolutely.
are out here. So,
Yep.
one other thing that I wanted to point out is one of my frustrations in the continued efforts of the opposition to spread misinformation on the project. To me, there's a difference between people that are concerned and want to make sure we're following through and the obligations we have under our permits, but then there's other people out here that I think are spreading misinformation and saying we're violating aspects of things. So there was a video that was shot. We came out there. The DEP's inspectors came out. All said that was done within our permit requirements for clearing. And then just recently, there was somebody that identified themselves as a forester who's been active in the opposition against the project and identified 7 different locations that he claimed that there were issues with. And the DEP now has come out with their own inspectors, their own people coming out and looked at and said all of those locations were done within the permit. So something I'm incredibly proud about,
Yes.
our whole team, how focused we are on environmental compliance to make sure that we're building this project in the way that was directed by the Department
Absolutely.
of Environmental Protection.
And that's what's good about, I've been out around on the project in quite a few different places, and I'm seeing the environmental people and the third-party inspectors floating all around, checking unannounced, coming up to a site, looking, making sure everything's compliant. And it's good to see that where we're seeing the workers, we're also seeing the environmental people checking up on all the controls, making sure you're operating, you're not overcutting. So I'm seeing that every day. Yeah. Show up at a job site and here comes a third-party inspector. No one knew they were coming into this area, and it's a good checks and balance. Keeps everyone doing a great job like they're doing here.
It was great to get out again to the new section of the corridor. We wanted to take some time and show the cutting that we are doing in this area that was defined in the Department of Environmental Protection order, and then also follow through the idea that the DEP and their inspectors have demonstrated that all the work we've done has been in compliance with the permits that we've received.